Hello, everybody. My name is James DiBiasio, and I am the founder and editor of DigFin in Hong Kong. DigFinGroup.com is a media and content agency focused on digital finance. I'm speaking today with two virtual banking or challenger banking CEOs and luminaries from Hong Kong, Mox Bank, which has only been open for business for a short time. Dennis Gouvin, CEO, joining me to talk in conversation with one of the veterans of the challenger banking scene. Jason Bates is joining us from Europe. He is one of the co-founders of Monzo Bank, and also was part of the founding team of Starling Bank, and is today a leader with the FS11 Media and Consulting Group, again, helping other institutions with their digital journeys. So welcome, gentlemen. We're going to have a fascinating chat about you guys and lessons learned and where all of this is headed with challenger/virtual banks. Jason, Monzo was started in 2015. Today, the company is considered a big success. You've got 4 million. Well, you're not there anymore, but since you've left, the company has racked up about 4 million users of its current account. And yet it's still loss-making. With that background in mind, because we're talking about banks at the end of the day, banks at some point have to become profitable. So when you look at what is happening in Hong Kong, when you talk to your friends like Dennis, what is the advice you give them when it comes to that balance of getting off the ground, doing something innovative, doing something challenging and worthwhile, and on the other hand, making sure that these eventually are financially sustainable?
Sure. So I think we're going through a massive digital shift across society. We see everything from entertainment and transport and hotels and media transforming from the digitized world to the digital. And there's a fundamentally different operating model. It's no longer about commodity products. It becomes about these intelligent services. And we see now, companies in the S&P 500 that didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. We're seeing every industry transformed by a very different way of doing things, of seeing things. So there's a land grab in financial services, in banking. And, it started, many years ago, but changes in regulation have opened up the battlefield for new players to come along and start grabbing those customers. Yes. So many of those new banks, new fintechs, new payment providers are not aiming for instant profitability and massive profits. They're aiming for growth because they know that actually many of the banks that are starting now will be the giants of the next 10, 20, 100 years.
Dennis, when you joined Mox as the CEO, you began building out this vision of a new type of bank. When you looked at the still quite short history of challenger banks in the UK, in Europe, elsewhere, what did you think were lessons that would be applicable to the Hong Kong or the Asia scene? And what did you think you had to kind of jettison and figure out for yourself?
Sure. Let me start, very quickly. We launched the Mox, almost, less than, a month ago. We are approaching 35,000 customers in Hong Kong less than a month. I think this is something which is super important for us. But besides all these numbers and Mox, when I look at the market and building a virtual bank, digital bank, challenger bank, whatever it is, it's really challenging. And the couple of things you have to manage very carefully while you are building the bank. Jason, they did many times this. I did in my past. And this is my second time. And when I look at most important thing is you need to understand the market very carefully, because markets are quite different. You need to understand what are the real motivations and how you are going to differentiate in that market. Because at the end of the day, banking, when you look at banking, you have a license, and banking products are almost same everywhere. But you need to understand how you are going to differentiate. What are the pain points? So for example, in Mox, what we did, we are talking about cashback, but we ask, the customer, and we try to understand, what is the real meaning of cashback? Because everybody is giving, coins, points, everything, right? And they cannot get, this, points. They can see, 45 days, after redeeming is a, really, really, difficult, process. We are giving right away immediate real-time cash to their, into their, accounts. I think this is the most important thing. You need to understand how you are going to differentiate, because at the end of the day, banking products are not rocket science. And then you need to understand the opportunities in that market. If you want to build something new. To be honest, how I call it, it's a future operating model, not the virtual bank or digital bank. It's a future operating model, for the banks. And what are the opportunities? For example, opportunity in Hong Kong. There were a lot of banks. There are still a lot of banks in Hong Kong. I think 170 banks we are talking about right now. But when we look at services, end-to-end digital service, it's really difficult to see in this market. So that's why we came to market and we try to create digital services end-to-end. Last week, one of our customer, he onboarded himself in less than 3 minutes. Onboarded means we gave a card, we gave all the accounts, and he started to do banking less than 3 minutes. I think this is something end-to-end you need to understand if you want to build a new or new business model in any markets.
Yeah, Jason, 5 years ago, when was the technology and the sophistication of challenger banks there where you could do the same? What was like that differentiator then, and what do you think it is now?
I think Dennis is spot on. Actually, there are very few things across the world that are really creating those differentiated products. You don't want to go out and buy customers with interest rates or splashy TV campaigns. You need to deliver something that's of value to them. And I think that comes in 3 areas. The first is some kind of financial hook. Like, people will try things, but they have to have a reason. And often it's not a nice app or some ethereal service, but actually some good financial reason. Revolut did, great FX rates. Monzo had again, the same sort of play in that sense in terms of great FX rates for traveling. So there's a financial hook. Secondly, there's this push towards intelligent services. Like, okay, I can give you your balance and statement and the ability to move money, but that leaves so much for the end consumer to manage their day-to-day finances, their paycheck that comes in. Has that arrived or not? Their regular recurring payments and their annual car insurance and the quarterly electricity bill and all of that stuff, or the glide path to the end of the month, where am I? So there's thinking about those jobs to be done that customers have and what technology and intelligent algorithms can actually help against that. And the third thing is brand. People want to know that a bank is on their side. We used to talk about, banks should be more like great waiters and less like bad landlords. And so a combination of a financial hook with a drive towards a different operating model, intelligent services on a much lower cost base with a great brand is the same as it was, 5 or 10 years ago. It's just arguably easier now.
Yeah. Dennis, on the branding point, in Europe, there was a great revulsion against banks because of the global financial crisis, or really the Atlantic financial crisis of 2008. We didn't have that problem in Asia. Banks, we may not love our banks, but I think basically leading brands in Asia have a quite strong position here. So how do you go about creating a difference, knowing that it's not that easy as it is for a challenger in the West, where they can point to some some pretty tainted reputations?
It's really difficult to build something from scratch and competing with the big players in the market, right? And there are a lot of really strong local players in Hong Kong, or when we look at different Asian markets. But the most important thing is we have to understand. So you cannot compete with this kind of big players on your own. So starting from day one, what I believe actually, you have to work with your ecosystem, your partners, and honestly, when we look at MOX, we have 2-3 strong JV partners: PCCW, Hong Kong Telecom, and Trip.com. I don't believe that you can be successful and coming to a market from scratch and get all the customers. It's really difficult and it takes time. And to be honest, it may be also costly, right? There are some good examples in the world. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's super rare. But if you want to make your business successful, you have to share it with your ecosystem, and you have to invest with your ecosystem. When I look at our JV partners and also our funding merchants, we are building services together. We are not doing only something like, okay, this is the injection, or we see capital money. So we are seeing them as a real partner, not like campaign partner, and we are building services. And to be honest, it's on the other hand, you have to create distribution channels. You're a new business, and without distribution channel, everybody believes that mobile is the new distribution channel, but only with mobile you are limited, right? Your brand is new, so that's why you need new distribution channels. And to be honest, I'm totally against to think like only to think about only digital channels. You have to think broadly. You have to look at the physical channels, also digital channels. How can you use or leverage different channels from your partners that you can reach your customers totally different with some superior experience. I think these are the important things that you can compete with the existing players in different markets.
Yeah. So that you've got partners which are shareholders. So, but the other aspect of partnership is, I guess, collaboration, open banking, embedding finance through other surfaces. But we have, between Europe and UK versus Hong Kong and Singapore, we have very different approaches when it comes to the law around open banking. I mean, here it's still very tentative. We're just taking baby steps under the aegis of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, whereas the UK, I think, had an extremely early and open banking culture. So maybe, Jason, you can tell us a little bit about what that culture enabled, and also maybe some of the limits, and what you think some of the challenges that Dennis might face as he looks to broaden his collaboration and ecosystem.
Well, I mean, Dennis is doing an amazing job. He really gets the sort of digital challenger space. And I don't think there's any client or anyone I know who works that sort of ecosystem and embedded finance thing better. It's not just an ivory tower of a bank and leaving customers to connect all of the dots. It's really about how does banking come together with all of the other things that people do in their lives. And I think Mox is doing a great job there. Open banking is still in such early stages. In some ways, it lacks a killer use case. It's a technology, not a value proposition. So yes, it allows in practice a customer to give permission to a third party to access their banking and to make transactions on their behalf. So that opens up all kinds of interesting possibilities. If you like, it opens up private banking for the mass market. It allows you to say, this agent over here is going to manage my banking for me rather than me doing it myself, and can do amazing things with that. But we're nowhere near that yet for a couple of reasons. One, people just haven't built those use cases out yet. And secondly, open banking through APIs, through both open banking and PSD2 in Europe, are still relying on very old, traditional, batch-based mainframe banking systems. So if anything, it kind of pulls the curtain aside, like in The Wizard of Oz, and you see the guy there kind of doing the wheels and running the really old machine. It exposes how old some of this technology is. But over time, we'll see that change. And it's going to be very interesting to see if banking follows the model that telcos have, where actually Nokia or Vodafone used to rule the world. They would tell Nokia what to do. But now, do you really care who's on the little, the little corner badge of your iPhone or your Android phone? You don't. Actually, you care what phone you've got, and you care what software is on there, what apps are on there. So I think we're going to see, through the sort of move towards open banking, more over-the-top services. If you're not building them yourself, someone else is going to be building them. And the danger to banks is that they'll be commodified and just become pipes, very much like the big telcos have in the West. And that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. when we look at the future, Dennis, for when you're thinking about the ambition for what a virtual bank can be, when we look at some of the banks in the UK, for example, they still seem quite constrained from a product point of view. I mean, Monzo has a ton of current account subscribers, but it's only very recently got into lending. It's only very, very recently decided to pivot into SME banking. I don't, there's a lot of things that's not doing that other banks can. In an Asian or a Hong Kong context, can virtual banks afford to remain that niche for very long? Or do you think that it will be a different way of going about how you add on partnerships, products, or different ways to think about how you deliver meaningful services to your customers?
So I think we are talking about real portability, because when we start to talk about portability, people believe that okay, which market is next, okay? But we have to define this very carefully, because Mox, for example, we have a laser focus to Hong Kong, perfect. And we built, Mox in Hong Kong for Hong Kong people. That's lovely. But on the other hand, what we built, I think we are one of the first entirely cloud-native bank in Asia. And this is super important. And to be honest, in the last 15 minutes, we didn't talk about, any technology, right? Because it's not about technology. But technology is important. Why? Because, we want to build something, and we wanted to build something, to operate, in different, models, right? So the first thing is, different markets. Of course, everybody knows that, this is a public thing, that we are trying to do something in Singapore, right? As Standard Chartered. Of course, there will be some different markets, for Mox, in the future that we will look at, different opportunities. But this doesn't mean that, you need to do entire bank, fledged bank, end to end. I think we are approaching a time that we have to understand what is the niche and what are the needs for this niche, especially different verticals. I'm not talking about retail, SME, corporate, commercial. I'm talking about real niche, and how can we define them, how we are going to serve them with our entirely portable platform. So Mox has this portability, and we can look at it. But the last thing is I have to mention that. Jason also mentioned it. Open banking, it's going to be important. How we are going to open ourselves, because it's not about creating a couple of APIs. So you need to understand the demand with your partners. How can you open yourself to everyone and operate in different channels, different platforms to help the customers. But you need to focus on real help. Because there are many banks I know that they are just doing APIs just for creating this kind of things.
Yeah, and I'd like to add actually that it's very easy to take a very traditional old core banking platform and add a nice app on the end and say I've got a digital bank. But actually that's not what Monzo, or indeed what Mox is underneath. It has the Formula One engine. It has an engine that can deliver far into the future as to what can really be delivered, both in cost savings and the ability to deliver all kinds of services within Hong Kong and across Standard Chartered's platform. So why did early banks focus? Because they were building these brand new stacks from scratch. It wasn't a traditional platform on a mainframe that ran batches overnight. It was real-time microservices on a cloud-based platform that means that they can, deliver all kinds of products and services that a traditional bank will have to spend, tens of, if not hundreds of millions in order to compete with. So I think you'd see people start with very focused propositions, because actually they're not just taking a bank in a box and delivering that. They're building new infrastructure for a new way of banking.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We're about out of time. Very quickly, Jason, looking back in your career with Challenger Banks and the work that you're doing today, one lesson, what was the one thing that you would undo or do differently?
Oh, wow. I think it's I'm not sure about doing differently, but the thing that's most surprised me is how slowly change has happened. I'm still talking about the same kinds of things today that I was when we started 11FS 4 years ago. there's a balance where banks are rightfully digitizing their systems, trying to get more customers online with their aging infrastructure and product-based mindsets, at the same time as launching new digital players and ventures. Are at this very weird time. I thought that time would go a lot faster, and I would probably have stuck with very simple messages for a lot longer. Yeah. Because we're as we say at 11FS, we're only 1% done on the digital banking journey, and there's so much more still to come.
Yeah, and Dennis, to wrap up, if we come back in a year from now and we're the three of us get a chance to chat again, what is the way that you hope to quantify or describe where Mox is and the vision that you have for it?
Our vision is, to be honest, Mox right now, we are focusing on Hong Kong, and to be honest, we talk about, the profitability and everything, but I think the most important thing is, as a new brand in Hong Kong, we want to, get the highest heart share in this market first, and to be honest, at the same time, we have to be practical, because profitability will come with, credit, vaults, this kind of, products. But we are going to do, these products, totally different. We will build, services with a contextual way, and plus, we want, make banking, more conversational. I think, this is our vision for Mox.
Great. Thank you both, gentlemen, for speaking and joining today. So Dennis Gouvin from Mox Bank, the new kid on the block, and the veteran Jason Bates, previously co-founder of Monzo, and from DigFin, I'm James DiBiasio. So thank you, everybody, and hope you're having a great Hong Kong FinTech week.